Silicon Valley has a multi-billion-dollar secret. For the last 2 decades, the world's most powerful companies have been obsessing over a future that was never going to happen. We're talking about $10 billion in wasted capital and thousands of burned man-hours, all for products that ended up as expensive paperweights or embarrassing punchlines. We were promised cars that drive themselves and glasses that replace our phones. Instead, we got the most spectacular engineering disasters in human history. They almost took their companies down with them. Let's start with the Segway. Before it was a tool for mall security and awkward tourists, it was codenamed Ginger. Investors claimed it would be bigger than the internet and that entire cities would be redesigned to accommodate it. Steve Jobs famously said it would be as big a deal as the PC. But here's the reality. It was a $5,000 solution to the problem of walking. It was too heavy for the sidewalk and too slow for the road. It didn't redesign cities, it just made standing up more complicated. Then there's Google Glass. This was supposed to be the death of the smartphone. Google's slick marketing showed a world of seamless AR overlays, translating menus, and giving directions in real time. But the actual product turned users into glass holes. It was a privacy nightmare with a battery that barely lasted a morning. Society wasn't ready for a camera on everyone's face, and Google was too arrogant to see it. But the peak of this hype cycle was Magic Leap 1. This company raised nearly $3 billion before they even showed a prototype. They promised cinematic reality, holograms jumping out of your floor so real you'd forget they were digital. When the headset finally arrived years late, it was a bulky pair of goggles with a tiny field of view that felt like looking through a mail slot. It wasn't magic. It was just a very expensive reminder that marketing renders aren't reality. Some failures aren't just bad business, they're genuine tragedies of innovation. Take the Microsoft Courier. In 2008, leaked concept videos showed a dual-screen digital journal that looked like the most intuitive productivity tool ever designed. It was a creative's dream, focused on sketching, writing, and organic organization. But Microsoft's leadership killed it because it didn't run Windows and it didn't fit their rigid corporate strategy. They chose to protect their legacy software instead of embracing a new form factor, leaving the door wide open for Apple to dominate the tablet market with the iPad just 2 years later. Similarly, we have the Palm Pro and webOS. If you ever used one, you know, the software was light years ahead of its time. It introduced cards for multitasking and universal search long before Apple or Google even considered them. But a series of hardware manufacturing delays and a disastrous acquisition by HP meant the supposed iPhone killer died on the vine. HP famously pulled the plug just 6 weeks after launching their webOS tablet. It's my firm belief that we're all just using a version of webOS today. We just happen to call it iOS or Android. Finally, there's the Next computer. After Steve Jobs was ousted from Apple, he built a black magnesium cube that was technically perfect. It was arguably the most advanced workstation on Earth, featuring an object-oriented operating system that was decades ahead of the competition. But it had one fatal flaw. It cost $6,500 in 1988, roughly $17,000 today. It was a Ferrari without a road. It failed as a commercial product because it was priced for a market that didn't exist. However, the story has a poetic ending. When Apple eventually bought Next to bring Jobs back, the failed computer's software became the foundation for macOS and the iPhone. It was a commercial disaster that accidentally saved the world's most valuable company. Sometimes a company's ego tries to pick a fight with the laws of physics. Apple's AirPower mat is the ultimate example of this. Apple made a bold promise. A wireless charging mat where you could drop your iPhone, watch, and AirPods anywhere on the surface and they would just charge. No sweet spots, no careful alignment. But to achieve that, they had to pack dozens of overlapping charging coils into a water-thin device. The result? Thermodynamics happened. The coils generated so much heat they became a fire hazard, and Apple's engineers couldn't find a way to cool them down without making the mat 3 inches thick. In a rare move of public humiliation, Apple cancelled the project after announcing it on stage. It turns out even Apple can't think different their way out of basic heat dissipation. Then we have Project Ara. Google wanted to create a modular smartphone where you could swap the camera, battery, or processor like Lego bricks. It was every tech enthusiast's dream. A phone that would never go obsolete because you could just upgrade the parts. But in the real world, the magnets used to hold the modules together weren't strong enough to survive a simple drop test, and the connectors needed for the modules added so much bulk that the phone looked like a brick. Project Ara was a victim of its own ambition. It tried to solve the problem of electronic waste by creating a device that was too structurally fragile to actually use. But the king of wasted billions is the Apple car, known internally as Project Titan. For a decade, Apple poured an estimated $10 billion into building a fully autonomous electric vehicle. They hired the best minds from Tesla, Porsche, and NASA, only to realize that manufacturing cars is a low-margin, high-complexity nightmare compared to selling software and silicon. They pivoted from a car without a steering wheel to a standard EV, and finally, they just gave up in 2024. This project proved that even with an infinite budget and the world's most talented engineers, you can't simply code your way into a century-old industry that relies on physical manufacturing and brutal safety regulations. Finally, we have the products that should never have left the napkin they were sketched on. The CueCat is perhaps the most famous example of a solution in search of a problem. In the late 90s, investors thought the missing link between print and digital was a cat-shaped barcode scanner. You were supposed to sit at your desk, scan a barcode in a magazine ad, and your PC would automatically open the advertiser's website. It was an over-engineered, tethered mess for a task that takes 5 seconds to type. Then there was the Palm Folio. Jeff Hawkins, the legend behind the original Palm Pilot, envisioned a laptop companion for your smartphone. It was a 10-inch screen and a full keyboard that had no internal storage and no processing power of its own. It was essentially just a terminal for your phone. It was a laptop that couldn't be a laptop. It was announced to a confused press, mocked for its $600 price tag, and cancelled just 3 months later. It was a bridge to a future that never arrived, because netbooks and the first tablets made the concept obsolete before the first unit could even ship. And we can't talk about tech failure without mentioning the Phantom. In 2004, this console promised to kill the retail gaming market. It claimed it would have no discs and no hardware upgrades. Everything would be streamed or downloaded over the internet. This was Netflix for gaming 15 years before the infrastructure for cloud gaming even existed. The problem? The console never actually worked. It was a series of empty plastic shells displayed at trade shows to keep investor money flowing. It has since become the gold standard for Vaporware, a product that exists only in press releases and the imaginations of those who lost their shirts investing in it. It's easy to laugh at a plastic cat scanner or a billion-dollar car that never drove, but these projects represent the hubris of an industry that sometimes forgets that innovation isn't just about being first, it's about being useful. We've spent the last 20 years throwing trillions of dollars at the next big thing, without asking if we actually needed a digital version of everything we do. In my opinion, the failure of these products is a vital part of the ecosystem. It forces the industry to stop dreaming and marketing renders and start building things that actually solve human problems. But I want to know, which of these failed future projects would you have wished to become a reality? Let me know in the comments below.